And I think the broader message that we're trying to get at, that we're seeing out of these interviews, is that if you're going to go back and fix it, you need to take into account all of the things that have happened over, under, and around, because you're not fixing TSCA 1976, you're fixing TSCA 1976 plus a bunch of scar tissue that has been built up. And some of those programs have actually turned out to be quite useful. There's been innovation that has happened in terms of, well, if this isn't gonna work, we'll develop something else. There are also, there are other programmatic effects that need to be taken into account. The emphasis, especially on the Hill, this is coming from Davies, was to put an end to the chemical of the month crisis. That's what TSCA was trying to do. So there was a mission in there, a broader mission of, every month something's coming up and we're saying, handle PCBs, look at the Keepone disaster, look at what's happening over here, and saying, no, we need some sort of systematic way of dealing with chemicals, not a way of dealing with them one at a time. Davies didn't have to implement it. Mark Greenwood says, but as passed, it has no underlying philosophy, right? It has no agenda, and it was that all of that was really cool at the beginning of the 70s. Later, that's not so cool, which is another quote that I could put in from Linda Fisher, who during her interview said, one of the big differences is we just know how to write environmental statutes differently now. Writing those in the 70s, it was really hard. No one had done this before. You're just making it up. And by the time you get to the 90s, it's, well, we know what works and we know what doesn't work. So when we're reauthorizing clean air, we're reauthorizing clean water, we know how to do it better now so that we can actually get what we want out of these statutes. So the case for all of this becomes asbestos, right? So for 10 years, the EPA collects data on why you should be able to ban asbestos. And they figure, as Jelenik was explaining, if you're going to go out and you're going to try each one of your sections of the statute to test the waters, what's the one thing we think we can really take action on to ban? Let's go after asbestos, but unfortunately it takes, again, 10 years to accumulate all of this. So it really builds off of all these other pieces, the questions of mandate, the questions of mission. It's not in there, but it's assumed to be in there. They have to go get data in ways that isn't involving the industry. But in the end, of course, they submit the rule. The rule is appealed, of course, by the industry. It goes to the Fifth Circuit Court down in Louisiana and is promptly overturned, saying that EPA had not met its burden of proof. Burden of proof specifically, and I think that, everybody's got a different memory of this, who was involved in it, but in part because asbestos was so diverse across the economy that the statute could, or the decision could be read as such that you'd have to go in and figure out and do a cost-benefit analysis for each individual application inside of the economy, and then so it becomes instead of doing one analysis, you would have had to do thousands of analyses and demonstrate that it's the least burdensome, et cetera, et cetera. And for reasons that largely went unexplained by most folks, it was never appealed. And so that's one of the things that we're very curious about, since it seemed to be so clear-cut to so many people.
As TSCA illustrates, the mere act of passing legislation is no guarantee that real changes will occur. It is really in the implementation phase that policy goals are or are not achieved. So what were some of the elements that influenced EPA's efforts to prioritize chemicals of concern and really resulted in the never-ending task of identifying priority chemicals? The lack of clear direction and deadlines in the statute impacted the ability of EPA to effectively prioritize chemicals of concern and advance an agenda on existing chemicals. TSCA gave EPA complete flexibility with regards to priority setting and did not provide any timeframes or deadlines for moving forward. There was also no identified criteria for what constituted chemicals of concern. The inconsistent vision and leadership within the agency also resulted in frequent shifts in prioritization frameworks and methodologies. In addition, TSCA failed to grant general substantive rulemaking authority to EPA, which prohibited the agency from more formally issuing general standards and guidance to the rulemaking process. This resulted in the inability of the agency to further define criteria for systematically identifying and prioritizing chemicals of concern. At the same time, there was also a lack of investment in the existing chemicals program. Where difficult choices about allocation of limited resources arose, programs with statutory mandates, like the efforts on new chemicals, were favored at the expense of programs with less direction, guidance, and mandates, like the existing chemicals program. In moving forward, it is important to apply this rich history of TSCA when contemplating amendments. This understanding can help frame current debates in two critical ways. First, we ought to learn from EPA's many innovative efforts on key chemicals management challenges. For many of these challenges, which still plague us today, EPA has explored, proposed, and attempted solutions. Understanding what has been attempted can provide a new perspective on TSCA's performance and suggest what must be considered to create an effective chemicals management framework. Second, we need to be respectful of the many factors that have beset effective results from TSCA. Statutory language is surely important, but procedural, political, and resource factors are also crucial to future success.